So, the 50 Cent in his inimitable way says, people talk about my getting shot like it represented something special. They act like they're not facing the same thing. But someday, everybody has to face a bullet with his or her name on it. Yeah, true. The denial of mortality, the refusal to confront one's death, or just simply not taking it into account. We have a culture that's not very comfortable with death. Not very comfortable. I mean, we love death in the abstract, or we love death in the sort of cinematic form that either glorifies it or mystifies it or takes it out someplace. But you've got to really think that your time on this earth is quite limited, and it goes by very, very fast. So does that motivate you to change, to go in and do some significant changes? I have lived in ghettos myself, and I have lived in places where life was not terribly valued. Life was just something you kind of had, and if you ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time, for whatever reason, you and life might part ways. So I think I did learn some very sobering and mind-expanding lessons with that. And I remember in those times, I remember also inhabiting that hyper-expanded present, that very kind of enlarged, this intense sense of peripheral consciousness, this intense sense of interacting with people on multiple levels, like not just two levels, like you're like jamming with everybody on the street as far as the eye can see, like 5 levels of consciousness, and all these like little energetic things you're picking up on, and kind of like strange little bits of psychic transmission are going on. And it's very, very different, say, than like the suburban experience or the university experience or something where things are very predictable and very bounded, and you just don't have to draw on those resources. So if you haven't really been in that kind of experience, it would seem very strange and shocking that you actually do have these abilities, these capacities to tune in these ways, in this sort of animal sense of things. But it is there. It's very much part of us. On the other hand, I've met billionaires, people who are legitimately billionaires, and experienced them and their personalities and their sense of time. There was this old guy. I actually liked him quite a lot, although we did have an adversarial relationship in a way. A guy named Irving Friedman, and he grew up in the Great Depression. Total product of the Depression. I mean, the Depression was so stamped on this guy. So in Zimbardo's model of things, this is a guy who is a complete creature that has a creature of the Great Depression that has, not a complete creature, is a creature of the Great Depression that just has that past element of his life is very alive to him. And I think that's what made him such a superb, superior business person. It gave him a set of disciplines and a set of focal points and beliefs, attitudes, approaches that did not let him down when other people who had come into their own in more prosperous times did not have that very deep sense of the potential consequences of failing to be alert and failing to have critical thinking and failing to listen carefully. I had no idea when I met Friedman. I had no idea of the nature of his wealth. He had the simplest office I think I've ever seen, the least pretentious office in Manhattan, and I found myself in there talking to him. It just had like this old leather couch, 2 fluorescent tubes, a steel desk that looked like an army surplus desk, and this huge bottle of Tylenol. He was in his mid to late 80s. He must have been. I think it was in mid 80s at the time we were talking. And this guy was so sharp when they brought in his rent rolls while I was talking to him and had the accounting, and he could look at it. I could tell that guy was adding it in his mind. He could check all the numbers, and we're talking like 5-digit numbers. He must have seen just like in 1 month's rent roll, there was probably several $100,000 had come in a month in terms of, and that was just like one little part of his empire. And I thought, yeah, this guy must be really rich. And he taught me some really interesting things, which I will share with you. The things I learned from a billionaire, from a real billionaire who really taught me how to interact with a billionaire, you will learn. And you're not going to have to pay some fortune to find out. Just continue listening. Anyway, so, we did what we had to do. And then he died a couple of years ago. And I found out through other channels at the time of his death, or after his death, they had to value his estate. His real estate holdings, I think that were in Manhattan, were valued at about $3.2 billion. $3.2 billion. And the only ornament this guy had on his desk was this little plaque, this little brass plaque that said, "This too will pass." and Irving was cool. I think we had sort of an interesting kind of mutual little thing with each other. We kind of understood each other, and I thought, this guy he's a hard ass. He's a wise guy. He's got a reputation for being a wise guy. He's come up the hard way, through the hardest of hard. And yet he retained a tremendous cogence and a tremendous clarity about him that I've found in few people, and a complete, just like 50 Cent, a very sort of free, he didn't really, he knew what he was dealing with, but he was very, very open. There was a kind of fluidity and openness to this guy that I've run into in few people, especially people who purport to be teaching, millionaire mindsets and stuff like that, versus the guy that actually did it. It's real different. So anyway, here's what I learned from Friedman. We had to sit down and hash out some stuff, and the way he approached it was kind of neat. So I sat down and he says, "Okay, this is what we're going to do. You tell me everything you need to tell me. I will sit here and listen to you, and you tell me, give me the whole load. Don't hold anything back. I want you to say everything you came here to say, from start to finish, okay? And if you need to go back and say it again, and I'm not going to say anything. Just say your whole thing start to finish, and then I will say everything I have to say from start to finish, and you will not interrupt me." I've never had anybody lay the ground rules down. So that's how. If you want to know how a billionaire really is going to, one example of a billionaire could interact with you and establish a dialogue in a business setting, that's how Irving Friedman did it. Say everything you have to say, start to finish. And what he learned was not to get into any of this point by point back and forth and going off on all kinds of weird little angles and getting hung up on stuff. You say your whole piece. You lay out your whole agenda from top to bottom, start to finish. And when you're done, you make sure you have said everything, and then you do not say anything, okay? And he will then reply from start to finish with his reply and his thinking. It was the cleanest, quickest, most efficient conversation, the least hung up on crap. This is what this guy learned from like 50 years in the real estate business. So there you have a real certified 100% platinum grade billionaire point taught to me. So put that one to use, all right? Don't say I never did anything for you.